What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Short Shifts Edition. I'm your host, Ben Burnett, and joining me for the first time in a while, Elon Dubrovsky. Elon, my pal, my friend, my guy, how are you on this fine Tuesday evening?
I've been waiting to hear you say that to me for a long time, Ben. I'm doing great. Excited to come on Short Shifts, talk some fantasy. I just did a show with Brian a couple days ago, and I just felt like we almost covered everything. There's still got to be a little bit left. And that's right. We got a good 20-minute show coming, and I'm really excited about the slate of guys we have to talk about today.
It's an exciting slate, Elon. I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, I mean, you must be raring to go. You only gave, 2 hours of takes 2 days ago? So you must have several more hours by now banked up.
Well, the thing that I love is on Short Shifts, you're going to be the one that's going to be asking me the questions. You know, instead of me having to ask questions to Brian, he gives his opinion. And every once in a while, I go maybe I respectfully disagree. And most of the time, I'm like, yeah, good point. And that's it. Now I get to be the one to say the things that you'll say I respectfully disagree. Or maybe you'll even not so respectfully disagree. I guess we'll have to see how bad you think my takes are. But I'm excited to talk about, I guess, what are we going to start with? The Red Wings, right? Who I'm seeing now, Arizona's now up 4-1. So I'm excited to dig into this not-so-exciting return from our friend Jakub Vrana.
Ooh, you know you wanna, Elon. Let's talk Jakub Vrana back in red and white, playing his first game of the 2021-22 season tonight, and starting out on a second line with Tyler Bertuzzi and Pius Suter, while Robbie Fabry gets that top line assignment with Larkin and Raymond. Vrana also practicing on Power Play 2. It looks like Robbie Fabry with the goal for Detroit so far, too. So nice little start to him in that Line 1 Power Play 1 deployment. Last year, Vrana had 11 points in 11 games with Detroit after the trade from Washington, but that was mainly with top-line usage. I guess I'm wondering, Elon, how high do you think Vrana can fly when he spreads those wings?
I mean, I would preach caution. Yeah, he had that good start last year. And I do want to say also that just because these are the lines today doesn't mean that these lines are going to stick. In fact, you mentioned Fabry's goal. That was the only goal they've scored so far. We're only in the second period. Arizona scored 4. So it's not as if this is a very successful deployment situation so far. So maybe things will even get shaken up by the time we're done recording this podcast. Oof. So yeah, I mean, maybe he gets back on the top line. Oh, Matt, wow, now it's 5-1. Okay, so maybe he gets back on the top line. By the way, so Nedeljkovic now pulled. Ben, I got to tell you, I'm just going to do a quick little sidetrack here, but Nedeljkovic got dropped in the Cupful Tier 1 Sweden a couple days ago or yesterday, so he only goes off waivers tomorrow, and I was already thinking to myself, I really could use a second goalie. All season I've needed a second goalie. I've got Kemper and then nobody, and I was thinking how much fab should I put down for Nedeljkovic, and now I'm wondering if maybe I'll just, because I actually grabbed Vejmelka just for today's game, and they're playing each other, and in this audition, it's definitely looking like Vejmelka is the more successful one so far. But again, this is a lot of commenting on a game that's one period in. Okay, Jakub Vrana. Here's my opinion. I think that he has some upside, and I think he could easily get back on the Larkin line soon. That said, he also has downside. We've seen Anthony Mantha, the guy who he was traded for, go to Washington and kind of disappointed. He also, if you recall, scored a goal in his first 4 games with his new team, and it seemed like what a slam dunk guy. But then he sort of settled into the background as more of a secondary player. And I'm not saying that Vrana and Mantha are the same player, even though they were traded in a 1-for-1. He's just someone that if he was a free agent, I'd be interested to give him a try. But he's not someone that I'm so sure you have to rush to grab him because he's going to be a for sure point per game superstar or anything like that. So I don't know how helpful that is. If I had to put a number on him, I'd say a 60-ish point guy is probably what I'd predict for the rest of the season.
I will say not a 1-for-1 trade. There were a couple draft picks going back in that deal. But regardless, I think that your point is well taken. I will say that I agree with you that there's nothing written in stone with these lines, obviously. I think Vrana's a guy who I'm going to be watching closely because I want to see those shots. I want to see how much time on ice he's getting. But I could very easily see this as a situation similar to Tyler Toffoli, who I have to mention because, I'm contractually obligated to do so, that we could see Vrana starting slow and almost and being eased back in. It's kind of funny because we're talking about forwards, but I kind of feel like the most interesting conversation that's been hinted at in this entire segment is the battle of the silent J's between Vejmelka and Nedeljkovic. That to me is a more interesting conversation than if Vrana is going to be good, because we've been waiting for so long, and then unless he starts to actually put up points, it's like a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, to be honest, the maybe the most interesting thing from this game so far is that Jakob Chychrun has 2 goals. Why don't we just spend the whole podcast just talking about this game as it develops? Yeah. But Chychrun just scored another goal, this time against Tomáš Greiss, and he has 4 shots. Chychrun, obviously such a big disappointment this year. We just had a conversation in our Discord server today. Someone posted asking if Chychrun is like droppable or like should we be excited about him just because he might get traded? And yeah, while the season has been disappointing, he still is taking shots. Like the thing is, he's taking a lot of shots, just not many of them are going in. And I feel like some players who take a lot of shots, even if they don't go in, there's the opportunity for a rebound, and then someone else, ends up banking into goal, then you get an assist. But I feel like on Arizona, that just doesn't happen as much, unless, I guess, Nick Schmaltz is on the ice or Clayton Keller. So, anyways, nice to see Chychrun doing something. I still think he has the capability to be a valuable player in fantasy, though, again, he's been disappointing.
Yeah, I kind of think of him, though, as like more of a Dougie Hamilton, like before he arrived in Carolina, or like even his first year in Carolina, where they still didn't, for whatever reason, want to use him on the top power play, where like obviously a dynamic player, a player who is going to fill those back categories for you. But Arizona is almost the perfect place for Chychrun because prior to this year, there was nobody who would really challenge him for top power play usage. Kind of like a Pietrangelo prior to him getting that top usage in St. Louis in his last season there, where it's just like, yeah, it's opportunity, right? It's really good to see him get that opportunity, but definitely no guarantee that if he were to get traded to a good team, that we would see him get good usage in fantasy. So yeah, I think that Chychrun has value. I think that there are a lot of leagues where I'm happy to have Jakob Chychrun on my team, but not a guy who I think is maybe top 5 upside, like Dougie Hamilton, a player who I just compared him to.
Yeah, for sure. Like maybe if he ends up himself like in Carolina because, D'Angelo is injured, that would actually be a really nice landing spot. Wow, it's 6-1 now. So that would be a really nice landing spot for Chychrun, both for this season while D'Angelo's injured, and also obviously D'Angelo is a UFA next year. So if Chychrun gets traded to Carolina, maybe D'Angelo walks. Next thing you know, we do have basically Chychrun taking over that Dougie Hamilton spot, and everything comes full circle. So that would be a really good spot. But obviously that's just total speculation. Who scored this 6th goal? Yanis Moser. Who had him in their Timmy's gang picks for the day?
Ooh, what a nice reference you're bringing up, Elon. You're helping us go full circle. I don't see Carolina as a likely landing spot for Chychrun just based on money, but yeah, otherwise I can see the point and the excitement there. Let's jump over to Florida, though, Elon, and talk about a couple of, I guess, like top 9 changes. It's kind of hard to say with Florida because they kind of like the Maple Leafs, where it's like there are some anchor spots on that top 6, and then there are a few players who seem to be in and out of the wing spots. A guy who you guys were talking about on Sunday, you and Brian on the Mega Show, talking about Mason Marchment on another heater here with 3 assists in his last game. He's got 6 points in his last 2. But pushed off that top line tonight after Anton Lundell was injured and the Panthers brought in Maxime Mamin. Marchment down to line 3, Mamin in on line 1. I guess I don't know that there's much to say. I guess like where you guys last were with Marchment was he was interesting on line 3. Of course, he's interesting on line 1. Now we're just back to saying, yeah, he's still interesting on line 3, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Marchment is the type of player, I think exactly, you nailed it. Like on the show, like he has clearly high upside. We've seen that he could go on these nice runs, but he doesn't have the guaranteed deployment. So at the same time, yeah, I wouldn't drop him necessarily just because Maxime Mamin came back. Because also maybe by the next game, Lundell will come back and they'll go back to the lines that they were rolling before. It's not as if Mamin, let's see here. So he doesn't even have a point. So how good can he be? And his ice time is low. So definitely don't go out and rush to grab Maxime Mamin. But is that how I also was Mammon, but I guess Mamin.
I've been when he doesn't put up points, I actually call him Minamanum.
Very good. Okay. By the way, we talked on the show about how Carter Verhaeghe had sort of slowed down. So of course he was listening, scored a goal yesterday, has an assist today. So anyone who held on to Carter Verhaeghe, like Brian recommended, you're getting something for it. So that's nice. When you're playing with Barkov, you're probably going to not stay cold for too long. Barkov, of course, 2 assists today.
All right, Elon, I want to hop on over to LA next, and I want to talk about an injury on the second line of LA, which if you had told me a year ago, I'd be saying we got to talk about the second liner in LA who got injured. I bet you wouldn't believe that were to happen. But yeah, Victor Arvidsson doubtful this week, likely to miss a handful of games as a result. And Arvidsson, of course, has found a very productive line, playing with Phil Danault and Trevor Moore. Trevor Moore in particular has been fantastic, posting 8 points in the last 9. His average time on ice is trending up over his career and season average, and he's been averaging over 3 shots per game over that stretch. Do we worry about Danault and Moore continuing their, I guess, fantasy relevant play, at least, with Arvidsson out of the lineup, or are we still riding the Moore wave?
It's an interesting question. Like, because don't forget, Arvidsson is not like, on the IR or anything. Like, he's day to day. So maybe he doesn't miss more than a couple of games. At the same time, we're talking about Phil Danault and Trevor Moore, who have been like great streamers throughout the year and maybe even have been holds for some people for stretches. But like, they're both guys that I've had on my fantasy teams throughout the year that I've enjoyed. And then when the schedule didn't work out for me, then I was like quick to drop. And like, I didn't have any huge regrets. Even like, Trevor Moore especially had a couple really good stretches. But even still, like, it's not as if I saw him in free agency right now, I'd like be like, I have to grab him. Like, it's like maybe if he has a good schedule. This week, LA plays, I'm just bringing it up here.
3 more times, pretty good, I believe.
Yeah, 3 more times. So Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So if people are worried that like Arvidsson being hurt affects these guys, I think potentially if you get 3 games in 4 days, maybe it can still be good. They're playing with now Andreas Athanasiou, who is not as good as Victor Arvidsson, but he does have a bit of an offensive upside to him. I think that defensively is where sometimes they run into problems. So I don't know. They're like not like super exciting. Maybe they lose a little bit of excitement, but not enough to take away from the fact that if they play 3 games in 4 days and you could fit them in your lineup, which is probably the big questionable thing. Because like Thursday especially, 26 teams are playing. So it's very unlikely that you're going to even, like if they're in free agency, you're not going to have room for them. And if you have Moore or Danault, I doubt you're going to be able to fit them in your lineup unless your team is like pretty weak. Hopefully you have better options to put in. So in that case, maybe you are dropping them not necessarily because of the Arvidsson injury, but just because maybe you can grab a Wednesday guy or a Friday guy and get some more games depending how important your matchup is. But long term, don't worry about it because after this week, probably Arvidsson will be back. Hopefully. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think that I think that Trevor Moore is a little interesting to me while he's at least like playing. He's on this heater, but somebody who I think is not a must hold. Especially, I will say, Elon, as we get closer to the fantasy playoffs, I'm much less concerned about like making the wrong add or drop. Mainly because like if Trevor Moore winds up having like a really solid rest of the season, it's kind of like inconsequential, right? Like it's like, over 8 games I missed out on whatever 9 points by Trevor Moore. That's much worse than like if you drop a guy in October who winds up having like a 70-point season when you drafted him expecting 55. You know what I mean? Like the margin is less consequential, I feel like, at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really will be surprised if Trevor Moore ends up being like the top free agent the rest of the year if he's available right now. Like he might be decent. And I think, he's the type of guy who at this point of the season, if you're in like a weekly head-to-head league with like a certain number of ads per week, which is how the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League works, you're playing the schedule a lot with these bottom roster guys. And I consider him a bottom of the roster guy, not like someone that I like need to be holding at all times and making sure that I hold him like even on days when he can't even fit into my lineup.
Coming up, Elon, we're going to talk about a couple of goalies who may be available to add to your roster heading into the playoff season, and a defenseman that I was able to find on the Tier 1 Cupful waiver wire who has been hot lately. You're listening to Short Shifts. Welcome back to Short Shifts. And Elon, I guess, you know what? I'm going to start with the defenseman. I mentioned him before the break, and I got to talk about my boy, Mikhail Sergachev in Tampa Bay, who has been absolutely fantastic for me since adding him up off the waiver wire in Tier 1 of the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. I'm basically doing this bit where I pretend to be Elon. I'm cosplaying as you, talking about my Cupful team right now. But over the last 10 games, Sergachev has put up 9 points, shooting over 5 shots a game in 4 of those games. Hitting, blocking, doing all the things that we love from Mikhail Sergachev. All of that from the second power play unit. And also seeing some time on ice uptick. I guess I'm wondering, Elon, what do you think about Mikhail Sergachev? This kind of feels like his MO to me, popping off for 10, 15 game stretches and then going cool for a little bit. But I don't know if he's on the waiver wire and he's playing this hot. I definitely would be. I would be recommending folks grab him.
I mean, yeah, for sure, he's not the typical guy you see in free agency. I was surprised when he was dropped in Tier 1 of the Cupful. I wanted to grab him, but it was one of these situations where Tampa wasn't playing for long stretches. They had that terrible schedule, and obviously you had the wherewithal inside of you to be like, I don't even care if I lose some games. Maybe you were in a matchup that was already over, either you were ahead by a lot or behind by a lot. I don't know your circumstances, but you made a smart move. Now you're reaping the benefits. I will say that I don't think Mikhail Sergachev is super different. I think that he's still the second power play guy, and he's still, he plays a lot of minutes, like you say. He's going to get you some peripherals. I think he's a solid 40 to 45 point defenseman. I don't think that's changed. Maybe upside of towards 50 points. Also, if you look at the teams that he's been putting up these big games against recently, he had a goal and 2 assists against Chicago, and he scored a goal against Detroit, and he scored a goal against Ottawa. He had a couple assists against Edmonton. If I were to guess, I would say that Mike Smith was probably in net for that game. So, at New Jersey, all these games where he's getting points are, I'm seeing just the game log, are games against weak teams, and I'm not he's good, he's solid, but I just think that that kind of stretch of the schedule might help inflate someone's numbers. Tampa's just been scoring a lot of goals lately, and once they start playing your Floridas and your Torontos and whatever, maybe then he starts going back to what we're used to. But
no one can score on Toronto's goalies, Elon. That's
that's a good point. Yeah, maybe that was bad. I should have just said Igor Shesterkin, and when they go against Shesterkin, I don't know if he's going to be able to do something.
Yeah. Which might have to be before the playoffs before we see that, fortunately. I think this is a situation where you want to ride the hot hand, but definitely, I agree with you that it's going to be tough to find him on waiver wires. I guess it's more of a thing of just advising folks not to sell too low. I guess if somebody wants to buy in on that hot streak, you can sell Sergachev for a power play 1 defenseman who's likely to put up 60 plus points. But I agree with you. Probably 45, 50 points is the most that I would expect pace wise, until the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's got 31 points in 52 games now. That's after this hot streak. That's where he's landed, which is still less than a 50-point pace. So I don't expect his pace to end up higher than it is right now. I think where he is now, in terms of his season total pace, that would be nice if he can hold it, and I think it's definitely possible. But like you're saying, if you could get up towards of a top power play 55 plus point defenseman, I'd for sure be making that swap. If you can swap him based on him getting goals against Chicago and Detroit, like I said.
Well, but also too, Sergachev's numbers aren't unsustainable in a season long sense. So I don't know, to some degree, I feel it's you're going to have cold stretches, you're going to have hot stretches, and if you look at the full season numbers, it seems pretty sustainable. I wouldn't be shocked to see Sergachev, being a 50 to 55 point defenseman just on such a good team. Kind of honestly, kind of a Devon Toews situation. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that he's a Norris level defenseman, similarly to Devon Toews, but certainly on a team that's good enough to put up a ton of goals when he's on the ice, talented enough to factor into a fair amount of goals, more than the average defenseman at even strength. Still only 23 years old. So yeah, I think that Sergachev could be a guy who, you can still draft even though he's never going to be the top power play guy, while Victor Hedman is roaming the ice as the clear best defenseman in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I will just respectfully disagree, I guess,
sure,
and say that I think that where he is now at his 49-point pace, I think that's the ceiling as far as I don't think of him as a 55-point defenseman. I look at his shots. I know you pointed out a couple big shot games. Again, I will point out that those were against Chicago, Detroit, and most of those other games, aside from those couple, where you're seeing 0s and 1s also. So overall in the season, he's less than 2 shots per game. Anyways, what he's doing now, I don't disagree that what he's doing so far on the season overall is sustainable. I agree with that, but I don't see further upside beyond that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess when I say that, what I mean is that every player has a range of outcomes based on their likely percentages, and what it seems to me based on looking at his underlyings is that this 49 point pace is actually fairly solid. And so if he were to go on an unsustainable run for a longer period of time, we're agreeing that he's not a point per game guy, but if he were to be able to put up, 8 points over his next 12, like that wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. Anyway, I don't think that we have a lot to add. That's beyond this. I think that we're probably mainly like 99% on the same page about Mikhail Sergachev.
Yeah, I think we definitely are, and it's just fun to chat and debate things.
Always. Well, let's talk about a couple of goalies, and I want to start in New Jersey, actually, Elon. A team that you have...
New Jersey, home of the best, most underrated player and amazing player in the NHL, Jesper Bratt, according to your recent retweet.
Yes, thank you for mentioning the accidental retweet that I did while we were recording the show. Yes, Jesper Bratt, a player who as far as I know, you have no connection to prior to this conversation.
Yeah, it was from my burner account, the tweet at you. But actually, I was really worried because, well, not worried, but like disappointed because Ben and I were just chatting. Then Ben was like, all of a sudden, like sort of like lost focus. You know, when you're talking to someone, then you realize like halfway through the conversation that they just like aren't listening to you. And then he was like telling me after, sorry, man, I missed what you just said because I accidentally retweeted a tweet because someone tweeted us apropos of nothing, being like, Jesper Bratt's amazing. And then when he said that, and I have Bratt on my cupful team, and so when I saw that New Jersey had scored a couple goals, and I was like, ooh, did Bratt just get a couple goals? That would be nice. And then I logged in and I saw like he didn't even get in on them. But actually now there's been a scoring change, and he has 2 assists now in the 3 New Jersey Devils goals so far. So Jesper Bratt clearly is the greatest, most underrated player, and I still can't believe I got him out of free agency, Ben. You were bragging about getting Sergachev out of free agency, so I got to brag about getting Bratt out of free agency, right?
Well, yeah, I think that it's only fair since you've never mentioned it before on a podcast, so I appreciate you bringing it up.
So wait, you wanted to talk about the Devils?
I do want to talk about Nico Daws, a player who you folks mentioned on Sunday, getting his 6th start in 7 games in New Jersey. He is facing a little bit of a barrage from the Avalanche. I guess he's getting avalanched over in Colorado. And, you know, overall, his numbers aren't amazing, but that doesn't seem to dissuade Lindy Ruff, considering the competition has been lackluster in the Devils' crease since Blackwood went down with the ankle injury anyway. Daws has been solid enough to put up a couple of wins behind that Devils squad, though. So, Elon, like, you see Nico Daws on the waiver wire, let's say, and you just mentioned to me earlier you had a goaltender hole in your cupful team, so you grabbed Vejmelka. Vejmelka's a guy who's been kind of splitting starts off and on with Wedgwood. He seems like a known quantity to an extent, can certainly produce in a, he's put up volume saves in games before because Arizona struggles with shot suppression. But what do you think? Is Daws kind of in that category of like Vejmelka types where it's like, you'll grab them because you need a spot start and you might hold on because they're getting all of the starts? Or does he have opportunity to sort of transcend that stream in and out level of goalie?
Yeah, I think I'd prefer Daws over Vejmelka. If Daws was available, I don't know, today would have been a tough ad just because he's playing against Colorado, like you said. But he's been pretty solid recently. And like you said, he's a volume guy. And sometimes it's just nice to have a goalie that you could depend on that they're going to play games, even if maybe they're not going to be as reliable as others. Besides, if Karel Vejmelka has been like the most reliable. He's had some like amazing games. Actually, when Vejmelka plays Colorado, that's when you grab him. That's when he has the most amazing game. But obviously tier 1 of the cupful is tough, and Brandon grabbed Daws last week, and I'll bet you he's going to hold on for a while now because he's a smart guy, which means he's not available for me. But if he's available to you, the listener, you need a goalie. And like you said, like he doesn't even have to be amazing. It's kind of like what I used to say about like Koskinen and Mike Smith at the beginning of the season when Edmonton was scoring so many goals. Like even if Daws just has like an average game, there's a decent chance he'll get the win just because the Devils have been scoring so many goals lately. You know, even with Nico Hischier out of the lineup, they've got 3 against the Avs today. So I think he's definitely interesting. But again, like a risky start. Like anytime he plays, it is New Jersey. They haven't been great defensively, and he's Nico Daws, not like a known quantity, but he does seem to be much better than John Gillies, and that's why he's getting all these starts lately.
One more stop on our tour de force around the NHL tonight. I want to go back to Los Angeles, in fact, and talk about the goaltending there. A player, you know, Cal Peterson was a guy I drafted in a few leagues. We expected good things from him. And one of I think the most surprising player performance of the first half for me was Jonathan Quick. The fact that he found his game and took over in LA for a while was shocking to me. But since the new year, his stock has really plummeted, and Peterson looks to be emerging once again as the number 1 in LA, like we expected. Interestingly, the Kings have been going back and forth on their starters. It's pretty much been like a Boston Bruins, like 2020 Boston Bruins-esque, one start for each guy, back-to-backs, whatever. It's just going to go back and forth. But this past week, Peterson sparkled in both starts of a back-to-back, a 19-save shutout over the Sabres, followed that up with a 32-save performance on 34 shots in a win over Boston. I guess the only thing that I'm at this point, I guess I'm wondering, are we right to expect that Cal Peterson is the guy we thought he was preseason? His full season numbers still aren't really back up to what we might have expected, but he's been really solid for these past few weeks.
Yeah, it honestly felt a bit like a torch passing moment. Like, it's very rare for any team to play a goalie back-to-back. And for LA to play a goalie on back-to-back games, like, they haven't done that, it feels like, in a long time, as long as, like, Quick and Peterson have been healthy. So I think this was, like, clearly a show of support. Like, you did so well with that shutout. We're going to give you the next game. And then he won that game as well. So, yeah, I mean, Quick is still there and he'll get some starts. But I think that Cal Peterson, and I'll bet you LA is loving that this is happening, because they already had extended him for $5 million for the next 3 years. And at the start of the year, I wonder if they were thinking, oh no, what have we done? Or maybe they had confidence in him because they, you probably do some research and make sure you know what you're doing before you sign a contract like that, you'd hope. But yeah, I think at this point I consider him the starter. If he's available in free agency, I think you grab him as a starter. Not to say he's going to be like a super high volume starter. I think Nico Daws might play more games than Cal Peterson for the rest of the season, assuming Blackwood stays out. But I think that Peterson is like clearly the starter now, and that back-to-back really cemented it for me.
I regret not having asked this a minute ago when we were talking about the Devils, but are we just assuming that Blackwood is just out indefinitely? Like, is he shut down now? I was looking at him and, like, there's no real news saying that he's not coming back, but it really doesn't sound like he's coming back.
Yeah, it sounds to me like one of these things where they just don't know. Like, they're just hoping that maybe one day he'll just feel good enough to play, but they're not going to rush him. Like, he's supposed to be their goalie of the future, and this is pretty much a lost season. It's like a heel injury. You never even hear about heel injury. I can't even say heel injury that easily on the podcast because I don't have much experience saying that term. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on. And my assumption is just that he's probably not going to come back. Like, the latest on NBC Sports Edge has, so Miles Wood is going to practice in 7 to 10 days. And Blackwood is behind Miles Wood, and so Coach Lindy Ruff said definitely Blackwood's progress is much slower. So I'm not expecting him anytime soon. So that's the other reason to go for Nico Daws, because I think John Gillies has gotten a really nice opportunity to show what he can do, and he's shown what he can do, and that's not be an NHL caliber goalie. So that's, again, we're back to Nico Daws, but a very NHL caliber goalie is Cal Peterson. Go grab him, and LA is going to be really good, I think. Even this year they're looking pretty good, and I think next year and the year after, when Byfield and Turcotte and these guys start coming into their own, this is going to be a very, very good team. So in your dynasty leagues, now's a great time to get Cal Peterson if you can.
Elon, I'm with you there, and actually, I was reading on Instagram that it's really common for people who get the vaccine, their second shot of the vaccine, about 3 months later, their heel just like collapses on itself. So probably Mackenzie Blackwood.
That's what it was. By the way, everyone forgot about this. Remember all the drama about Tyler Bertuzzi and how he can't play the games in Canada? And then I have him in one of my leagues. Actually, I traded for him in my Dynasty League right before that news came out. I remember I was kind of like annoyed about it. And then he's had a great season. Everything's been good. And now I'm in my fantasy playoffs. We started early because it's 2-week matchups. Just for me to be reminded, hey, remember that thing about Tyler Bertuzzi? He doesn't play in Canada, and the Red Wings play in Canada like in 6 of their next 13 games or something like that. So it's really going to come get me right when I forgot and got comfortable. So it's like, come on, Bertuzzi. Wow. I guess, to be fair, the Wings don't need to win these games. They're not a playoff team. I kind of wish if the Red Wings were doing a little better, then maybe he would have gotten the vaccine because these would have been important games. Or maybe not. I don't know how staunchly he feels about this position.
Elon, oh my goodness, thank you so much for joining us for another marathon episode of Short Shifts. It's always a Ironman event when you come to join us. And I guess
I'm just warming up. I haven't even broken a sweat yet. I don't know what you're talking about. If you call this a marathon, then clearly I'm in better shape than you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no question there. But I mean, this is a long shift for us. We typically, me and Lewis, we're winded after by the first commercial break, and then we're ready to go by minute 18. It's whew. But no, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to hearing you and Brian go again this Sunday. And Yeah, I don't know. Anything to plug otherwise?
Well, I'm just going to plug a show that I'm really looking forward to, which is your next show with Lewis, coming on Thursday on this very podcast network, feed. So make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson, and we'll be back at you with another episode soon. And until then, play smart, keep your shifts short.
You stole my thing. This is unbelievable.
Ben, wait, stop the music. Breaking news. Jakub Vrana just scored a goal. So, did we say that he would? I think we said that he'd be good. So
I think what we agreed on was that he'll definitely score at least one goal tonight, and otherwise no promises.
All right. See you, everybody. Bye.